Hey guys, welcome back to r/Prorevenge. In this video, my homeowner association president was stealing my firewood, fining me for having it and forcing me to buy from her friend's company. So then I labeled the box "Do not burn indoors", left it right where she had been stealing and went absolutely nuclear. Let's dive right into this Reddit HOA Karen story. And today's XXL HOA mega story starts like this. So I live in one of those rustic lifestyle HOA communities near the mountains. Think brochure photos of people in flannel holding mugs on decks, but with 20-page rules about shrub height. To be clear, my place is a small cabin-style home, nothing fancy, but it is mine and I work from home in IT, so I basically live there full time. The house has central heat, but I also have a legit wood-burning fireplace. Between power prices and how cold it gets, that fireplace is the difference between a reasonable utility bill and donating a kidney. I'm one of those guys who actually enjoys splitting and stacking my own firewood. I've got a gravel pad behind my garage where I keep a neat stack, mostly birch and oak, cut to the same length and spray painted so I can track how long they've been seasoning. It's stupidly organized, but it means I always know what is ready to burn. My lot backs up to another yard with an older wooden fence. On the other side is the main character of this mess, our HOA president, a full-on stereotype of a Karen if there ever was one, perfectly highlighted bob, massive SUV, and constantly talking about community standards and curb appeal, like she's auditioning for a reality show. When I first moved in, the HOA was fine. Annoying but background noises. Well, then she moved in a couple houses down, started going to meetings, and within one election cycle, she was president. And yeah, stuff went downhill fast. Suddenly, my work truck was an eyesore, a shovel leaning against my back wall was yard clutter, and I got a written warning because my trash can was visible from the street on the wrong day for a grand total of 20 minutes. The woodpile became her white whale. Technically, the HOA rules allow firewood storage as long as it is on your property, neatly stacked and not leaning on shared fences. I followed that to the letter, gravel pad, tidy rows nowhere near the fence. I even had photos with timestamps in case they ever tried something. Didn't matter, I started getting reminders that our vision statement favored low clutter, clean lines and that bulk storage was discouraged. No official violation at first, just passive-aggressive notes stapled to newsletters. At the same time, she kept dropping hints. At one HOA gathering, she was going on about how everyone in the community used the approved firewood vendor because it was supposedly safer and better for the image. By just a wild coincidence, that vendor turned out to be a business her friend ran. When I said I would keep splitting my own wood, she gave me the tight smile and said, "Well, just remember, if people start complaining, the board has to consider the majority." I shrugged it off. I had dealt with petty HOA garbage before. As long as they stayed out of my bank account, I was fine. Then the first cold snap hit. I keep a mental map of my woodpile and I know roughly how many rows I've got and how fast I go through them when it's really cold. So when I walked out one morning and saw a noticeable gap in one of the middle rows, I immediately thought, weird, I didn't burn that much. I told myself I was maybe imagining it and maybe I had grabbed more than I remembered, maybe I miscounted when I stacked and then it happened again. And again, over about a week, one side of the stack, the side closest to the fence with Karen's yard on the other side, kept thinning out. Not a ton each time, just a few logs here and there. Enough that you could see daylight where it should have been solid. I live alone and I'm the only one who uses the fireplace. I don't drink and I'm not wandering outside in the middle of the night grabbing mystery wood. That's when I started really paying attention. My kitchen window has a clear line of sight to the back corner of the yard and the fence, and one night I am doing dishes, lights off in the kitchen, and I see movement near the fence. At first I think it's a raccoon or something. Then I see the beam of a phone flashlight flicker on. Two figures, both in hoodies, are at the fence. One of them pushes on a board I'd always thought looked a little loose. The whole panel flexes inwards just enough to create a gap. The other one reaches through and starts grabbing logs off the side of my pile, passing them through the fence. They are not even sneaky about it. They are clearly in my yard, on my side, just taking wood. It takes my brain a solid 10 seconds to accept what I'm seeing, and then it clicks. The smaller one is her teenage son, the other one looks like the handyman she always has around doing projects, and by the time I dry my hands and grab my phone, they've already passed several locks through and are putting the fence panel back. I get one picture through the glass. It is grainy and half obscured, but you can tell that there are two people at my fence after dark where they have no business being. I stand there fuming. I want to run out and yell, but all I see in my head is her turning it around. "He came at my child screaming in the dark," and blah blah blah. I know exactly how that goes, so I decide to gather information instead. The next day, I get a message in the HOA group chat. "Reminder, winter welcome wine night at my place this weekend. Cozy fire, appetizers, let's get into the holiday spirit." Normally, I avoid any optional HOA event like the plague, but now I am curious. Her house is the kind of place that looks like it is staged for a magazine at all times. Open floor plan, giant stone fireplace, tasteful throw blankets that have never seen a nap. I show up, make small talk with a couple neighbors, and pretend to be normal. My eyes actually keep drifting to the fireplace. Next to it is a decorative metal rack full of split locks, the exact same kind of locks that I stack. I'm not saying all birch look the same, but these have the same knot patterns, the same little paint marks on the ends that I use to separate the ready-to-burn stuff from the newer wood. Basically, I know my work when I see it. I walk over and pick one up like I'm admiring the grain. It has a distinctive scar knot that I remember swearing at when I split it because it caught on the wedge. It is mine. I put it back and feel my jaw clench so hard, it actually hurts. At some point, I catch Karen in the kitchen refilling her wine glass and decide, screw it, I'm saying something. "Hey," I start, keeping my voice casual. "Weird question. Have you noticed any firewood going missing lately?" She raises an eyebrow. "No. Why?" I've had several rows disappear from my stack, and then I see your fireplace all stocked up with wood that looks exactly like mine. And I happened to see your son and the handyman by my fence last night. I don't accuse. I just lay out the facts. She lets out this little laugh, the kind you do when someone says something embarrassing in public and you want to pretend it's a joke. "Everyone around here uses birch," she says. "You don't own a tree species." I say, "Sure, but I mark my ends, and those have my markings." Her smile tightens. "Are you seriously accusing my family of stealing wood logs? Maybe if your woodpile was not such a mess, you would know what you have." I tell her that I got photos of how it is actually stacked. She immediately pivots topics like she planned this part. "You know," she says, swirling her wine, "we've gotten several comments about that pile. It's very industrial, not really in the spirit of our community image. People move here because it feels like a resort, not a lumber yard." "I'm within the rules," I say. "For now," she answers, "but standards evolve, and if people are concerned about safety or aesthetics, the HOA board has to address that. And by the way, if you're worried about costs, we do have an approved supplier who can deliver neatly stacked covered racks. Much better for everyone." So she goes from stealing my wood to now implying that she can fine me if I don't buy overpriced logs from her friend. I walk away before I say something I cannot unsay. I stay at the party just long enough to not be too obvious, and then head home and back up my security camera quotation marks, aka my one blurry photo through a window, onto my computer. A few days later, I get an official notice in the mail saying, "Violation, unsightly and non-compliant wood storage." It lists my address, cites a section of the rules taken so out of context it is ridiculous, and warns that if I don't correct the issue by a certain date, daily fines will start accumulating and further enforcement actions may follow. In other words, they are gonna fine me for the wood they are literally stealing. I go to the next HOA board meeting. I actually hate going there, but I show up in a decent shirt, bring a folder of printed photos of my neat wood stack, and a highlighted copy of the CC&Rs where it says wood storage is allowed, and when it comes to owner concerns, I raise my hand. I then calmly explain that my woodpile is on my property on a gravel pad, not touching any fences, and it is neat and has been there since before half of them even moved in. A new violation notice says it is unsightly and non-compliant, and by the way, firewood has been going missing and I have reason to believe that someone is taking it through the fence, and you would think this would at least get a serious discussion going. Instead, Karen, who is chairing the meeting, introduces my item as, "We have an owner who's confused about our standards and had a misunderstanding at a private social gathering." She says that at her party, I was aggressive and accused her family of theft in front of guests, which is a wild exaggeration exaggeration of me quietly asking a question in the kitchen. She claims that several neighbors have complained that my woodpile looks like a junkyard and brings down the visual cohesion of the street. She does not, of course, mention the part where her kid and handyman were in my yard grabbing logs like it was Costco. The other board members are mostly retired folks who hate conflict more than anything, and one of them suggests that maybe I could just move the pile somewhere less visible to keep the peace, and I point out that the rules literally say I'm allowed to store firewood where it is and that I have evidence someone is trespassing and taking it. I hold up the photo from my kitchen window. "You can't even tell who that is," Karen says. "It could be anyone, and frankly, taking pictures of kids in the dark is concerning." That little dagger landed. A couple of them gave me the side eye, and one of the board members, the treasurer, just shrugs and says, "The violation stands as written, and if you want to formally dispute it, you can hire a lawyer and request mediation, but we are not changing it tonight." So now I'm paying for firewood that is being stolen, getting fined for having the wood, and the people in charge of fixing this are the ones doing it. Cool. I try the normal channels first. I file a non-emergency police report for theft and trespassing. The officer who comes out is polite, looks at my photo, walks the fence line, and essentially tells me the chances of anything happening are basically zero. "It is firewood," he says. "No offense, but dollar-wise, it is not much. You don't have a clear video, no witnesses besides yourself, and your neighbor can just say she bought similar wood from a store." I ask if I can at least have it on record that I reported it, and he says sure, fills out the report and promises to swing by the other houses and remind them not to enter other people's yards. And well, I've no idea if he actually did it, and I also schedule a consulting with a local attorney to see if I can fight these HOA fines. He looks over the violation, the rules, my photos, and gives me the kind of sigh that you only get from someone who has dealt with a lot of HOAs before. "Yeah, you're technically correct," he says. But fighting them will mean letters back and forth and maybe mediation, maybe court. You may win, but it'll cost way more than the fines unless they go completely ballistic. And they know that. As for the theft, he basically agrees with the cop. "You would need to prove the wood is yours." Without receipts or some serial number on the logs, she just says that she gets hers from somewhere else. So legally, I'm stuck, and meanwhile, I get a second letter from the HOA, and this time claiming my bulk wood storage is a potential fire hazard, and that it may be in violation of local ordinances, and by the way, it is not. They hint at further action if I don't cooperate. It's obvious what's going on here. She wants me to get rid of my wood, so I have to buy from her friend, and she wants to show that she can make my life miserable if I don't play along. I'm not proud of what comes next, but I also want to be honest about how my brain got there. So, in my garage, I keep a big plastic storage tub with random leftovers from various projects and holidays. One corner of that tub has a bunch of fireworks I never used. A while back, I went on a trip with friends over the state line where fireworks laws are looser, and those fireworks might be considered illegal where I live because they are quite powerful. One buddy brought a bunch of heavy loud stuff for a big bonfire night. It rained, plans got cancelled, and some of the fireworks ended up forgotten in my trunk. I tossed them in the tub planning to get rid of them properly later. Fast forward though, they are still there taking up space. Among the pile are a few of the bigger showpieces, not military-grade explosives or anything, just the kind that are definitely not supposed to be set off indoors. Every time I dig around in the tub for something else, I would see them and think, I really need to figure out how to dispose of those safely. Then life would happen and I would forget it again. After the HOA meeting, I was in the garage stress organizing like I do when I'm angry, and I opened that tub. I remember staring at those fireworks and thinking, if only there was a way for Karen to end up dealing with these instead of me. And well, cue the intrusive, very bad idea. I want to stress this. I knew it was a terrible idea. I knew it was dangerous. I knew if anyone innocent got hurt, that would be on me. I went back and forth in my head for days, but I also kept replaying the mental video of her kid in my yard, her smirking at the meeting, the fines stacking up, the lawyer just shrugging. I eventually convinced myself that if I was crystal clear that something was dangerous and not for indoor use, then anyone who took it and did the exact opposite was actually just accepting that risk. And well, the only person brazen enough to keep stealing from that exact same spot was her. That's how I justified it to myself. I'm not saying it was ethical, just giving you my mental gymnastics. The actual plan though was simple: turn a few junk logs into bait. I grabbed a couple of the ugliest, twistiest pieces from the far back of my wood pile, ones I'd normally throw to the side for outdoor bonfires. I did some basic work to hide a couple of those leftover fireworks inside them. I'm not gonna describe the how in detail because nobody needs a step-by-step, but it was nothing sophisticated. Just enough that they still look like regular logs at a glance, and then I built the worst, most obvious warning label. I had an old crate sitting in the garage, so I reinforced the bottom, put the modified logs in there along with a couple of regular ones for cover, and screwed a lid on top. On 3 sides of the crate, in thick black marker, I wrote "Firework logs, outdoor bonfire use only, do not burn indoors, high risk, do not use in fireplaces." It looked ridiculous. Anyone with half a brain would see that and go, "Oh, this is not normal firewood, I should not touch this." And that was the point. It was there for me for outdoor use, and to make it absolutely not my fault if some genius ignored the warnings, I set the crate near the edge of my gravel pad close to the fence where the thefts kept happening, not on the property line but in Sticky Fingers range, and then I waited. Winter really settled in that week. The community chat was full of people posting their mantles, mugs and pets by the fire. And of course, Karen posting photos of her cozy family nights by her giant stone fireplace. I rearranged my actual wood, moving the stuff I wanted to burn farther from the fence. The only pile near that loose panel was the bait crate, sitting there with its giant warning like a cartoon. From the street you could not read the text, but if you were standing at the fence opening the lid, you absolutely would. A couple evenings go by with nothing happening. Then one night I'm sitting on the couch with a movie on low and the lights dimmed. I get up to grab a drink and, out of habit, glanced through the small gap in my kitchen curtain, and there they are again. The same 2 silhouettes, same fence panel, same phone flashlight. I watched the teenager push the panel in, the handyman squeezed through, and they walk straight to the crate, not even glancing at the rest of the yard. He holds up the phone to the side of the crate to read whatever's written on it. I cannot hear them, but I see him lean in, open the lid, look inside, and then start handing logs over. I take a couple more photos. They are grainy and mostly show shapes, but they clearly capture 2 people inside my fence lifting wood out of a crate that clearly has big block ladders on it. They close the lid, push the fence panel back in, and disappear into the dark. I remember standing there hard hammering like I had robbed a bank or something, thinking, okay, you made your choice. Whatever happens now is on you. I didn't sleep much that night. Nothing happened immediately though. They must have stacked the logs somewhere to use later. The bang came a few days after. It was evening, I was wearing headphones and half into a video game when I felt, or more than heard, this deep thump. The whole house jolted like a truck had hit it. A second later I heard glass shattering and someone screaming outside. I ripped the headphones off and ran to the door. When I stepped outside, the first thing I saw was smoke and dust pouring out of Karen's fancy living room windows. One of them was completely gone, just jagged edges of glass. The big front window had a spiderweb crack through the entire pan, with a huge hole in the middle. Neighbors were standing in their yards in various levels of undress, pointing, yelling. Someone was already on the phone with emergency services, and from where I stood I could see into part of her living room. The fireplace area looked like a bomb had gone off. The mantel was collapsed, the TV that used to be mounted above the fireplace was on the floor at a weird angle, the screen was shattered. There was debris everywhere, and the living room was ruined and looked like a war zone, minus dead people obviously. I made myself walk closer with the other neighbor so I didn't look too suspiciously uninvolved. The front door swung open and people started stumbling out, coughing. Her husband had a cut on his forehead. One guest even had blood on their arm from what looked like glass. Karen came out last and covered in soot and dust, screaming about how her whole house exploded. The fire department showed up quickly. They checked for active fires, made sure the gas lines were fine, and then focused on the fireplace. Standing on a sidewalk, I could see into the firebox. The grill inside was bent and twisted, the glass doors that used to be in front of it were somewhere in the room, and there was just a lot of ash and pieces of stuff that didn't look like wood. The stone facade around the fireplace had visible cracks, and one of the firefighters said something like, "Looks like someone lit off something more than a log in there." And that is when the pit in my stomach really settled in. It's one thing in theory, but it's another to see shattered windows and people bleeding. Thankfully the injuries were minor, cuts, bruises, a sprained wrist from someone getting knocked off balance. No one went to the hospital in an ambulance though. The biggest visible damage was to the house itself. Over the next couple of hours they taped off the living room and told the family that they couldn't stay there until a structural engineer checked things out. You could already see hairline cracks in the ceiling and a section of drywall bulging it like it wanted to come down. The neighborhood buzzed with theories. Gas leak, chimney clogged, random old house thing? I kept my mouth shut and went inside, sat down and just stared at my hands for a while. I was not celebrating actually, I was not exactly regretting it either though. Mostly I was thinking, okay, now comes the part where people start asking questions. A couple days later I got a knock on the door. It was the fire marshal and an insurance investigator. They asked if I'd seen or heard anything. I told them I'd felt the blast, went outside, saw smoke and broken windows, and that was about it. They asked if I had a fireplace, and I said yes. They asked if I used it often. I said yes. I heat with wood part-time. Then they asked a question and told me they already knew more than they were saying. Do you have any fireworks or other pyrotechnic materials stored on the property? I could have lied, but I didn't. I said, I have some old fireworks that a friend left in my garage a while back. I've been meaning to get rid of them properly. They asked if they could see them and I took them to the garage, opened the tub and showed them the leftover assortment, smaller stuff, a couple mid-sized pieces, and the ones I'd used were obviously gone. I also showed them the crate and at that point I still had my big marker warnings on it, but it was empty. I explained truthfully that I'd made some novelty locks with fireworks inside for an outdoor bonfire idea, and well, that they were never meant to be used indoors, and that's why I'd plastered the crate with warnings. I said I put the crate outside near my wood pile because I planned to burn them in a fire ring in the side yard when we had enough snow on the ground. I did not mention my expectation that someone would steal them. I just said they'd gone missing and I assumed some kids had messed with them. The marshal asked if I knew whether those particular fireworks were legal in our state, and I said, I bought them in another state on a trip years back. I said, I assumed they were normal consumer stuff. I never really checked, to be honest. And then they just sat in the tub. They looked over the crate, took photos of the warnings, and wrote a lot of notes. From what I later heard when they examined Karen's fireplace, they found obvious signs that something explosive had gone off inside. Fragments of cardboard tubes, weird residue mixed in with the ash, scorch patterns that didn't match a normal chimney fire. And they asked her where she got her wood from and she told them she just used regular logs from a neighbor, or alternatively, just used logs from a local vendor, depending on who was asking and when. She definitely did not tell them that she'd been helping herself over my fence. The insurance company brought in their own adjuster and investigator. Between the fire marshal's report and the condition of the fireplace, it was pretty clear that this was not old wiring or a house spontaneously combusted. Something was burnt in there that shouldn't have been, and the central question became who introduced the dangerous item and did they do so knowingly? From the insurance side, the answer didn't really matter as much as the fact that they now had grounds to deny a lot of the claim. When an adjuster finally explained it to her, loudly on her front lawn within earshot of several neighbors, the gist was the blast originated in the fireplace firebox, there was clear evidence of some kind of firework or pyrotechnic involved, and the homeowner had not disclosed any such usage and now claimed it was just normal wood. Insurance will gladly cover damage from a random house fire, but they get grumpy when you start introducing explosives. In the end, they agreed to pay for emergency stuff like temporary shoring up of structural issues, basic window replacement to make the place weathertight, even some cleanup, but they denied a huge chunk of the interior damage claim, including fancy finishes, electronics, furniture, and full restoration to before condition. Their reasoning boiled down to misuse of unknown explosive materials and failure to properly supervise contents of the fire. They also hinted pretty strongly that if it came out that she had used illegal fireworks, they might come after her for the money they paid. From what I understand, that left them on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars, new stonework, new mantel, new windows, new flooring and drywall for the living room, and part of the adjoining room too, repairs to the ceiling cracks and repainting. As well as replacing the TV, couch, rugs, decorations, etc., they didn't have that kind of cash lying around, so they ended up taking out a home equity loan and maxing out an existing line of credit. Over the next few months, construction trucks were a regular feature outside their house. Big sections of the living room were gutted. The house looked like a war zone from the street for a while. I went to exactly one more HOA meeting during that time. Karen came in late, sat down carefully like even the chair offended her, and tried to run the meeting like nothing had happened. People were polite, but you could feel the shift. Before the explosion, she was the queen bee, and after, she was the neighbor whose cozy fire had turned into a mini demolition site. A couple people made comments about safety and transparency in decision-making. Someone else brought up the fact that our rules didn't say anything about woodpiles being forbidden and asked why letters had gone out saying they were. The treasurer, who I'd assumed was fully in her pocket, surprised me by saying that maybe they had been a little overzealous about enforcement and needed to review the standards. She shot him a look that could have melted steel, but she was dealing with bigger problems at home and didn't have the same energy to fight every little criticism anymore. Not long after, an email went out announcing that she was stepping down as HOA president to focus on personal matters and that the board would be holding a special election to fill the position. Nobody said, because she blew up her own living room, but everyone thought it. I did not run for the board. I have no desire to be in charge of anything involving neighbor politics. But I did vote for the most reasonable candidates and ended up with a new president who actually cares more about keeping the roads plowed than whether your garden hose is visible from the street. One of the first changes they made was cleaning up the vague language in the rules about clutter. They clarified that firewood storage was allowed in the back and side yards as long as it was not stacked precariously or blocking access. The violation on my wood pile quietly disappeared. No apology, of course, but no more fines either. As for Karen, the combination of the loan, the insurance mess, and the social fallout broke her completely. I heard through the grapevine that they seriously considered selling, but decided that they could not without losing money. Instead, they dialed everything back, fewer parties, fewer posts in the community chat, and much less interest in everyone else's business. Do I feel guilty? Yeah, sometimes. I did not want anyone hurt. Seeing people walk out covered in glass and soot was not really satisfying. It was sobering, and it reminded me that even when someone absolutely deserves consequences for what they did, collateral damage is real. I don't recommend my method, I'm not going to justify it as some noble act, but in my own personal accounting, the score feels balanced. She wanted to burn my money, and in the end, she ended up burning hers instead. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Was OP the a-hole here or not? Also, if you could like the video, that would be awesome. Comment number 1 said, "You're the a-hole dude. You turned your backyard into a Looney Tunes Acme catalog and then acted shocked when the dynamite lock went boom. I don't care if Karen is the final boss of HOA villains. You literally booby-trapped your woodpile with fireworks and waited for someone to steal them so they would get hurt. That's not gotcha, that's premeditated chaos. You made a box that basically screamed do not use indoors and put it somewhere you knew people were already stealing from. That's not really a warning label, that's just a sign that says, I dare you. People were injured, windows blew, firefighters rolled up and insurance got involved. You escalated from petty theft and fines to household explosives. You played stupid games and made everyone else win stupid prizes. If this were a movie or something, you're not the hero, you're the Reddit Batman with a fireworks utility belt. Grow up, install real cameras and file police reports and sue the HOA or move. Detonating the neighborhood is not justice, it is reckless endangerment with extra steps. Comment number 2, not the a-hole for being angry, documenting the situation and standing your ground on these woodpile rules. The HOA president was clearly abusing her power, targeting you, and there's strong circumstantial evidence that her household was stealing your wood. That said though, once the firework locks enter the story, the moral line blurs. While you labeled them for outdoor use, leaving hazardous items accessible where you expect the theft is a bad idea with foreseeable harm. The aftermath proves it, so not the a-hole for the woodpile dispute or resisting HOA pressure, very questionable judgment for the bait though. If you'd stuck to cameras, a police report with better evidence and pushing back through proper channels and maybe a neighborhood coalition, you would be in the clear. As it stands, you were justified in being fed up, but your method turned a justified grievance into a dangerous escalation. And yeah guys, would you agree with this? Would you think that OP went too far here? I mean, it almost borders on nuclear revenge, but I'm not exactly sure. Comment number 3, everyone sucks here. Karen is a nightmare HOA dictator who allegedly stole your wood and abused her position to pressure you into buying from a friend. That is gross, corrupt, and illegal trespassing, and theft are not community standards. But your response was to create explosive bait locks and park them where you knew the thieves were shopping? Come on, you knew exactly what you were doing. Outdoors only labels don't absolve you when you purposefully leave hazardous stuff out to be taken. The result was not really karma, it was shrapnel, injuries, and a wrecked living room. The board sucked for rubber stamping fake violations, the handyman and kid sucked for stealing, Karen sucked the most for weaponizing the HOA and lying to investigators. However, you escalated into danger territory when there were other options: motion lights, proper camera footage, police follow-ups, more claims, demand letters, reporting HOA abuse to the state, or rallying neighbors. Everyone sucks here with an asterisk that Karen still managed to out-awful everyone on the aesthetics scoreboard. And yeah guys, don't leave just yet, the next one is a brand new story and it is titled "Neighbor kept blocking my bike, so I made sure his expensive speakers got a workout." So I live in an old building in Porto with a tiny ground floor entryway where people store bikes and random stuff. There's maybe 2 meters of space total. My bike lives there and has for 2 years, everyone knows this. New neighbor moved in last month, 3rd floor, and he bought this massive vintage motorcycle that he's clearly obsessed with. Keeps it covered with his fancy tarp, polishes it constantly. The problem is he started parking it directly in front of my bike, like wheel to wheel. I'd have to move his motorcycle to get mine out. I left a note asking him to leave space, but there was no response. Asked him in person and he said, "There's plenty of room, just go around it." There isn't though. This went on for 3 weeks. Every single day I would have to shift his motorcycle to get my bike out. And it is heavy as hell and I almost dropped it once. Here's the thing though, this guy also has an expensive sound system. I know because he plays music at like 7 AM on weekends. Loud music. He is really into American classic rock apparently, and our building has thin walls and I work from home as a translator, which means I'm home basically all the time with access to the main door buzzer, so I started buzzing his apartment, not constantly, just like every time I thought about it, which turned out to be a lot. 9:30 AM on a Tuesday? Buzz. 3 PM on Thursday? Buzz. 8 PM on Saturday? Buzz. The intercom system in this building is connected to speakers in each apartment and they are loud. You cannot turn them down, it is some ancient system from the 80s. After about 5 days of this, he came down while I was leaving, asked if I'd been buzzing him, and I said, "Oh sorry, must be hitting your button by mistake. These old systems are confusing." He clearly didn't believe me, but what was he gonna say? 2 days later, his motorcycle was moved to the other side of the entryway. Plenty of space for my bike now. I have not buzzed him since. Probably. And the next one is a petty revenge story which is titled "Block Me from Leaving the Bus. Here, have some snark." Once upon a time, I took the bus into downtown Philly. The stop where I wanted to disembark is a place where a lot of people get off the bus and a lot of other people board the bus. Well, there I was, standing near the exit, waiting for the door to open. However, as soon as the bus opened the door, lots of people were standing outside or crowded up to the door, effectively blocking everyone else from getting off. I stepped out of the bus into the throng, excusing myself as I went, because there was no way to avoid physical contact with these folks on my way out, and sure enough, I brushed against someone on my left and someone else on my right. The woman on my left ignored me and the one on my right turned and cursed at me. I stopped and turned to her and said, "What do you want me to do? Fly over the crowd? My broom is in the shop. If my broom were working, I wouldn't need to take the bus." Now the crowd was all laughing, all but Mrs. Grouchy Face, who glared daggers at me. I just turned and resumed walking. I had places to be. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, where you can find daily stories. I will see you again tomorrow.